Hello everybody, happy Wednesday, April 22nd. I had intended to make this on Monday and then last night, and neither day worked out. I actually made my whole video on Monday and then realized my camera had died about 5 minutes in, so that sucked. But world's crazy right now, it's getting crazier. But I had a serious topic I wanted to talk about today, and I will preface it by saying that it is going to go into some it's going to go into some detail that might make people uncomfortable, because it is going to go because I'm going to be talking about HPV, which is, oh man, I don't know why I have to keep looking this up because I keep fucking up the pronunciation. It is human papillomavirus. Once I see it, I can pronounce it. It's just not looking at the word. I can't say it. So it is human papillomavirus because it's PAPILLOMAVIRUS. So virus. And it is a very common infectious disease. Spreads by sexual contact. Treatment can help, but this condition can't be cured. Can last for years or be lifelong. Requires medical diagnosis, lab tests, or imaging often required. But this is it's an infectious disease that, as of right now, there are no definitive tests for men. There are for women. I don't know how that's. My infectious disease doctor told me about it at some point. I don't remember what he said because that was 6 years ago, or 5 years ago. But he told me about it, and I'm sorry for the yawn. I just woke up. I just wanted to hop on this video right away so I can remember everything I said on Monday. Yes. So obviously I have had HPV. And through my videos, I've told you about the surgeries I've had, but I wanted to talk about what it is, what my experience was with it, and, how common it is, what it is, the treatment you can get before you even get it, the facts behind it, just talk about it a little bit, because it is important to talk about it. It's not, it can be something serious, and I just wanted to talk about just it. But I'm prefacing it by saying if you don't want to hear about it, or if you're, I'll try to keep it more factual than gross. But the fact is that the symptoms are not fun, as I am living proof of it. So I'm not going to shy away from it because it's just part of the facts. And I'm sure people have heard much grosser things that were like, for comedic effect or for entertainment. This is real life. This is real life. This is a medical condition that you can have. So by terms of what can be really gross, this is something that's really serious and can really help you going forward. So, yeah, you can turn this video off right now if you're going to be grossed out. But by the same token, if you watch this all the way through, you might learn something. So I recommend you watch this all the way through. But anyways, HPV, so human papillomavirus, spread through sexual contact. So in September, it was September of 2014. Well, let me get through the facts first. So the facts behind HPV is that my infectious disease doctor told me that 90% of all human beings on the planet will have this at some point in their life, but only 10% of them will ever show symptoms. So 80% of them, oh my god, my brain just completely fried because I took 90 minus 10. Oh my god. 90%, that's not how you do the math. 90% of the people that have the disease won't know that they had it, because only 10% of them show the symptoms. The symptoms are not fun. But just think about that number. 90% of people will have HPV in their lifetime, but only 10% will know that they had it because they'll have symptoms, or they'll test for it. But women are the only ones that can test for it. So, well, I mean, more people can know that they have it because women can test for it, but they might not show symptoms, but they can test for it. So they might have it but not show symptoms, which is, you know, still not good because it means you're carrying a virus that can affect somebody and cause them to show symptoms. Because even if you're not showing symptoms, you can pass it along to somebody and they can show symptoms. It's kind of like the flu. If you have the flu, you might not show symptoms right away, or you might be coming off the flu but still holding the virus in. And if you pass it to somebody else, they might show symptoms and, you know, show flu-like symptoms. It's kind of like that kind of system. You know, it's a virus, so it's not. It's something that you can hold inside of you, pass it to someone else, and they can show the symptoms rather than you show the symptoms. It's just one of those things. And with me having had HPV and it not being testable in men, I did not say testable. Like I can't test for it, so I don't know if I still have it or not. All I know is that I haven't had symptoms in 5 years since my last surgery. So, because I've had 2 surgeries for this. So my doctor said it's more than likely that because the thing is that even if you've had the virus, even if men have had the virus, when you're not symptomatic, you're more than likely not to pass the virus. You're less likely to pass the virus, like 95% less likely to pass the virus. But there's still that 5% that you could pass it. But it's like extremely unlikely. And like the more the time goes on and you're not symptomatic, the less and less the odds go. So right now I think I have like a 2% odd or 2% odds that I pass it along, which is extremely. I mean, if 98% to 2%, I mean, you know, odds are in my favor. But I've always been in like the 10% of everything. So I was in the 10% that showed symptoms. I've been in like the 10% of people that have an extra vertebrae in the spine that have spinal problems. I've been in the 10% of people that have shoulder problems at 14. I was in the 10%, or I was in the 7% of people that have. I had something called a Chiari-1 malformation in high school, which is like the is the least invasive problem of like the Chiari malformations in my brain and spine, but it caused way too much spinal fluid to build up in my spinal cord, so now I have migraines every day that I have to control my medications, and it's I'm always in the 10 or 7% of like, I'm always in this small percentage of things that can go wrong, and this is just another one of those things. So anyways, in September of 2014, I had been bleeding on my backside for quite a while when I used the bathroom, and I was really nervous, so I went to my doctor, my primary care doctor, and he did an examination, and he said, "You have something wrong. I want you to go see a colorectal surgeon," which is a surgeon of proctology. So it's an anal surgeon. So I went to go see him, and he did a more thorough exam. And I will spare you the details from that because you guys can probably figure out what exactly he did. But, well, you're going to run wild with your own versions of what happened. But, you know, it's an exam kind of like a colonoscopy, except you're awake. So he sticks a camera in there and he does an examination, and it's just, you know, it's what he has to do to figure out exactly what's wrong. And he said, "You have warts." And I was like, warts meaning? And I was like, oh shit, never mind, I figured it out. Like, because I was 22 and naive and drunk most of the time, so not then, but like not during the appointment, but you know, most of the time. So my brain was kind of fizzled, and I was working at that point. I was working 2 jobs still, so I was still working, you know, 15 hours a day, and it was a rough go of it. That's right after I started working 2 jobs again, because I just started working for my new bosses at the deli. So I just started working 2 jobs again, and now I'm dumped. And I have this dumped in my lap that I have an STD. And he said, "You have to have surgery done." And I was like, lovely. I was like, "What does a surgery entail?" And he said, "Well, for this, you have to have the warts burned off." And I was like, okay, that sounds painful. He's like, it is, but you're gonna be knocked out. The surgery will take about an hour, or he said about half an hour. And I was like, okay, half an hour's not bad. Cool. That was only my third surgery at that point. I've now had 9. So 9 surgeries, or 7 surgeries in the past 5 years. But anyways, so December 5th, I think, of 2014, I had my first surgery. He estimated to be 30 minutes. It took an hour. He did not realize how bad the infection was, because the infection actually went about 6 inches or so inside me. And then afterwards, the recovery was, it was brutal. I mean, the first day, because you break your arm, you put a cast in it, you rest your arm. You break your wrist, you rest your wrist, you don't use it. You break your leg, you use crutches, you rest your leg. You break your neck, you put a cervical collar on it, you don't move your neck. Break your toe, you strap it up, you don't use your foot. You have surgery on that, you still got to use the bathroom. So it's not something that you can just let rest. So I had to use the bathroom and have this thing heal at the same time, and it prolonged the healing process, and it was excruciatingly painful to the point where I was sobbing every single time I used the bathroom for months, plural. My parents were just, my parents didn't know how I had gotten the disease. It was through being raped. But, by 3-4 different men. I don't know who gave it to me. They didn't know how I had gotten it, because I didn't tell them what happened to me until I tried killing myself in 2017. So that whole time, they just thought I was being unsafe and just thought that I was being stupid and just kind of not punish me. They didn't kick me while I was down, but they basically told me, they kind of said in the nicest way possible, this is what you get for being stupid. And I was like, I wasn't being stupid. I can't tell you because I'm not brave enough to tell you yet. But anyways, 2 months later, during my 2-month post-op, the infection had come back. And cancer cells were starting to form. And the doctor took a biopsy in January of the cells, and he said cancer cells are starting to form. So he's like, you have precancerous cells that are starting to form in the wounds. And I was like, okay, please get them gone. And he's like, I can, but we're going to have to do this whole surgery over again. And this time, the burns are going to be so much worse. And I was like, ugh, all right, well, just do what you gotta do. But then as an added bonus, and this will be for a whole nother video, March, what day was it? No, it wasn't March. It wasn't March. I don't know. I still have the notice in my book stand, because not because I'm ashamed of it or anything, but it's just a reminder of a past I don't want to go to. It's a reminder of where I came from. It's a reminder of just horrible memories and just a life I don't want to go back to, because it's a reminder of my alcoholism and everything. But I was diagnosed in I think it was 4 days before my surgery, because I remember it blew up my relationship with a great guy named Tim at the time, and we're still kind of friends at this time. And sorry, Tim, to bring you up in this video, but I'm not even sure you're going to watch it. But he it kind of blew up my relationship at the time, because I was diagnosed with, oh man, I can't even believe I'm bringing this up in the video, but it was, it's all a result of just the horribleness of my life at the time. But 4 days before my surgery came up, I was diagnosed with syphilis. And that's such a rare disease at this time, in 2015 at the time, that I had to go to a public health official and look at pictures, and it was disgusting, and it was just, I had to go to the Cook County Courthouse, and it was just, that's a whole other story, whole other day. But, so I had another surgery on May 1st, 2015, that surgery was not as invasive as the other one, but the burns were worse. So it was more painful recovery, even though it was not as invasive. And the recovery time was a little bit longer, so it took until about July for the burns to heal. Relationship blew up. I blew it up. I started drinking like crazy. I basically told him, I'm damaged goods, just leave me, and he did. It ruined a lot of what I thought of myself. That diagnosis, the HPV one, it really wrecked a lot of what I thought about myself. And then learning that it's not detectable in men, or not detectable, not testable, like I can't test for it, really, really, really hampers my dating life. Because there's only one person ever that's accepted what I have, and was okay with it, and actually got the vaccine for it, because there is a vaccine for HPV that prevents like 13 of the, I think there's like 20 strains of HPV, and it prevents like 13 of the strains from affecting you. So there's a vaccine for it. They recommend you get it like 14 years old. I didn't know about it. I didn't even know about HPV until I had it. But they had, but I dated this one guy. Well, I may have talked about him on here. I don't know if I was dating him at the time. Was I dating him at the time? Yeah, I was dating him at the time. I dated him at the time that I started this YouTube channel thing. Nikki. He was at the very beginning of this YouTube channel, I think. It was in 2018. But yeah, he got the HPV vaccine, and we had to wait like 6 months for like any sexual activity because it was a vaccine over like 6 months of time or something like that. But he was the only one that accepted it and actually went through the treatment to be able to go forward and be a little more comfortable with it. But in general, my dating life has been awful because no one really accepts me for me and sees me as a liability, essentially. Because they don't know, mainly with men, because I talked about it in a previous video that bisexuality is kind of a curse, because with women, they can't accept that I've been with men, and with men, they don't like that I like women, but they can deal with it. So with women, they just don't like that I've been with men, and then with men, they don't like that I've had HPV because they don't know if they've had it unless they've showed symptoms. So they don't like that they could potentially get it, and the only way they know if they had it is if they showed symptoms. Because the symptoms are pretty grotesque. They're awful. They're awful and gross. But it's something that sucks because I want to be with someone. I want to show them love and happiness and create great memories with someone, but I have to share this with them at some point. And for me, I've gone on a lot of dates since the diagnosis, and for a few guys it's gone to a couple months, and then I've told them, and they say, why didn't you tell me sooner? Because I started to get attached. And then with Nikki, I told him on the first date that I've had HPV, because I started to get to the point where it's not that I didn't want to hide who I was, because this isn't who I'm not HPV. I'm Alex. But I also didn't want to start dating someone and start to get attached to someone, or let them start to get attached to me and then bring up this bombshell that might blow up the relationship or blow up the dating life or whatever, you know, if they're uncomfortable with it. Because I have had an STD that I don't know if I'm still carrying, but it's more than likely that even if I am carrying it, I can't, or I won't pass it along. Because it's harder to pass on this virus if you're not showing symptoms. My infectious disease doctor has told me that. I still have an infectious disease doctor, and with every guy that's said, like, I might be able to date you, I have offered to take them to that infectious disease doctor to talk about this, because I totally get being scared to be with someone that's had an STD. I've had 2 of them. The one was cured. Syphilis was cured with penicillin. I think that was what the medication was. That was with a needle that was so large, I hated it, and it went right into the waistband, where there's absolutely no flubber. It was just muscle. That hurt like a bitch, and I fainted from the first shot. That was, yeah, because I had to stand for it and like hold onto a bar, and they, you know, they put the needle in, and I was like, ow, and when they took it out, I passed out when I went to go sit down. And I had to do that, I think, 4 times. It was, and there was 2 needles in each session. Well, that's kind of that whole story. I didn't really need to make a video about it, but well, that kind of affected my life too. But we'll talk about that at a different time. But HPV has just kind of had a weird hold of my life because I haven't had any symptoms since the second surgery. I had some lingering effects from the second surgery, but it wasn't like I didn't have the disease. I just had lingering effects. Like I had some abnormalities since the surgery that I had corrected in December of last year, so just 4 months ago. And now everything is back to normal as normal as normal can be. You know, back there, and you know, it's just that I just wish that there was an easier way for me to date without having to bring this up, but I'd rather tell them up front and say, I have a doctor, we can totally go talk to them whenever you want to, I can set up the appointment. You know, he said, you know, if you ever start to date someone and they have questions, bring them in. I'm happy to talk to them about it and answer any of their questions. You know, he's a really, really nice doctor, and I really like him, and I haven't seen him in 5 years because I haven't had to. You know, I had one boyfriend a really long time ago that it was back in 2015 or 2016, and he said, I want to go see your doctor and talk about this, and I said, that's fine. So we drove over to the hospital, we talked to the doctor for like an hour, because he had a lot of questions, but he felt better afterwards, because he was like, you know, now I understand, but he still broke up with me 3 days later. He said it was just too much. Because, you know, I think he psyched himself out. I think he asked too many questions. But yeah, so dating life is hard. It's one of those things where I have to bring it up, because I can't just be like, you know, I can't just hide the fact that I've had 2 STDs. I can't do that. I mean, the one is cured and I can't ever get it again, so it's not, that one I don't have to bring up. Because I've created antibodies in my system that'll fight it off if it tried to attack my system again. But this one, I just don't know if I'm carrying it. And if I happen to, you know, fall into that 2% that pass it along, or 1% or whatever, because I'm not showing symptoms, so I shouldn't be able to pass it along. You know, even if I did pass it along, they should not show symptoms. It's like one of those things that, like, if I'm not showing symptoms and I pass it along, that person shouldn't show symptoms. But like, if I had the warts and somebody had had sexual contact with the warts, they would probably have the warts as well. That's kind of what this virus is. But it just sucks. HPV sucks. It'd be one thing if it was a sucky disease that had a test for men, but it's a sucky disease that doesn't have a test for men. So that's basically it. And if anybody has any questions about this, feel free to message me. I have, like I said, I always leave my contact information in the description as much as I'm willing to give. I'm not going to give my cell phone information or anything, but you're always welcome to contact me. You've already learned so much today, but if you have any more questions, feel free to contact me. But otherwise, I'm in a much better place now. 5 years later, much better place. I'm over 3 years sober now. I have to. Oh, the other thing with HPV. So after the surgeries, I have a heightened risk for cancer now because I had HPV and it was such a bad infection. So every year now, I think it was every 3 months at that point for the first year and a half. But now every year I have to go for an anal pap smear. So it's literally an examination of my backside. And then I have to do a cancer biopsy every single year. It's in January, every single year in January. So every single year in January, I have a week where I just am in full panic mode because I'm always nervous. Which is stupid because every year I'm told I'm totally fine, everything's fine, no symptoms, no cancer, no nothing. But, the fact that I have to do a cancer biopsy every year for the rest of my life is scary. Because I have a heightened risk for cancer for the rest of my life. Because of what I had. So that HPV is a little scarier because, not scarier than any other infectious disease, but just, it's a little scary because you have a heightened risk for cancer sometimes if the infection gets super, super bad. So just everybody out there, do your best to take care of yourselves, use protection, don't take life for granted. Get regular checkups with a doctor. If you don't have health insurance, find a clinic, what is it called, a pay scale clinic or something like that, where they see you based on what you make or whatever. Make sure you get regularly checked out. Get STD panels done regularly. I would say I think you're supposed to do every 3 or 6 months. Do that. And for HPV, if you're nervous about it, tell your doctor, hey, I know there's no test for HPV in men. Can you do an examination just to make sure I'm safe? They will know what that means. They will do an examination, and you can have some peace of mind. But with that being said, just everybody please try to take care of yourselves. I did not, and I paid the price heavily, and I'm still paying the price going forward. And this is not, I'm not saying that I have it worse off than anybody else. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that, I'm not saying that I regret what I did, because living with regrets doesn't do any good. You have to move forward regardless. So, I'm just moving forward just with a little more obstacles than I wanted to. But I don't regret what happened. I just would have rather not have had happen what happened, which is kind of a regret. Anyways, no, it is what it is. I'm just happy that I've gotten to a better place now. And I'm hoping that somebody comes along someday that, accepts me for me, and doesn't see me as an object of what has happened to me in the past. And again, with that being said, I'm going to go get ready for work, which I have in like an hour and a half. That's a lie. 2 hours. 3 hours. Jeez. Can I do it? No, 2 hours. It is 2 hours. Anyways, everybody have a great week coming up. Great weekend coming up. I don't know when I'm going to make the next video. I'm kind of all thrown off now. But yeah. I'm at 6 days a week right now. Saturday is my only off day right now. Or next week. I don't know, I make my next video. Oh my god, this video is like 30 minutes long. If anybody has any questions, comments, concerns, message me, comment. Yeah. Everybody have a great week. Keep fighting, keep living, keep laughing, keep loving. Just keep laughing. Keep trying to find ways to make your life better. Especially through all the shit that we're going through, and keep leaning on each other and being kind to one another. The store I've been helping out at, the Walgreens I've been helping out at, the customers have been super nice for the most part. Whereas like my store customers are not the nicest in the world. It's been a nice change of pace for a change. So just everybody be kind to one another. We'll get through this together. Everybody have a great week.